projected timeline
Who
for
knows?
completion?
They had a meeting today. I've been waiting for years. These things take a long time. 5 years is typical. So I don't know. They finally finished the drawings of the airport. So I have no idea. 2, 3 years.
I can't wait to see it.
Next time anybody arrives, well, they'll be able to see it.
Well, let's see what you're working on now, your newest work, which is going to be shown at Gallery Ortiz for Photo Septiembre.
September 14th. Yeah, this is my new work. I've always wanted to do erotic pieces, and just never got around to it. So now in my older age, middle age, I'm going back and doing it. So I did these at a friend's.
Is this a midlife crisis?
I guess so. No, I do this in Mexico at a friend's house because I need to have 2 parallel views. Take the picture straight down like that. So I get the tablecloth, set it up, and hire models from the art school and buy these beautiful.
So is the tablecloth on the floor here?
Yes, on the floor, and then I set up the models and the fruit and I was also inspired. And part of the inspiration for this was this new discovery from the Swedish Brain Institute is that sexual attraction is just like animals and humans. Before it was always suspected, but now it's been proven that it goes by pheromones, by smells. It's not by how people look. It's more by smells. And women are attracted to pheromones from men's underarms, and men are attracted to pheromones from women's urine. Like animals. And then obviously, actually it's kind of like a discovery of homosexuality and lesbianism too, because it's like apparently one cell on the top of the pituitary gland that determines what smells you like.
And where did you learn about this?
I read about it in the paper. I read the paper every day. If you read the paper every day, you find out some things, even San Antonio.
This was the Express News?
Yeah, believe it or not, 2 articles. One, and then a year later, more conclusive evidence.
Look what it produced.
I know. Well, that's why there's flowers, like you see, like the bird of paradise coming out from his underarm there, and then that other one's coming out from, from between her legs.
And you have another one to show us here. And what's going on in the background? Is that celestial imagery?
Yes, they're put into context of outer space.
So it's the food chain. And
this piece changed.
And it's time. Hold on. Speaking of change. We have to pause for a moment while they change the video, so we'll do that. I hope we didn't lose any of that fabulous conversation there. So Katie will give us the signal, and then we'll make some closing remarks. And yet you're now using state-of-the-art technology, and I must remark, the luminosity of the colors again has something to do with the fact that Chuck Maurer is printing them, but you're directing it, and. So anyway, we'll see how many of these you're going to be showing.
I'm not sure yet, but this piece changed. I just changed it. So
what did you change about it?
Oh, I decided I needed more movement, and there was too much contrast.
Okay.
So I didn't know I'd given you this one.
So this was not printed yet. In other words, the JPEG.
I'm still working on it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a work in progress. So everyone needs to remember the 14th of September.
September 14th. Yes.
They can see.
Gallery Ortiz on
how much
Hildebrand and McCullough.
How much movement you've injected into this scenario.
It'll have more movement when you see it over there.
Okay, that's great. All right, well, let's turn the lights up, but before the audience asks you some questions, I want to just start out. I know on your business card you use the term, your name, and then followed by the term cultural adjuster. Tell us what you mean by that, and how did you come up with that term?
Well, I have to admit that I stole it from Mel Casas, first of all.
Aha.
Yes.
Plagiarism.
He doesn't. I told him. He said it was okay. So. No,
well, what does Mel mean by it? What do you mean by it?
I don't know what he means by it, but what I mean by it is that, like I was saying before about, San Antonio, with the whole country, the whole world needs a lot of adjusting. I mean, it's just, well, obviously the politics and preemptive strike, this war, and it's just a disaster. It's just terrible. And that's one example. But more personally, in San Antonio, I think it's a reference again. My reconquista is that San Antonio be known as what it really is, a Mexican-American city, and it does not take away from anyone else's culture. It does not mean that, it's like people talk about New Orleans as being French or Boston as being Irish. Doesn't mean if you're not Irish that it's lesser, that it's taken away from you, or that it's just not being inclusive. It's just a a general cultural thing. But the newspaper in San Antonio can't even use the word Mexican American. They use Hispanic. And given the history of San Antonio, the history with Texas and what it really is, it's absurd to call it Hispanic. And there's just such a lack of, it's not in the history books. It's almost as if the Mexican American, appeared from outer space here. I mean, like, there's no cultural context, there's no history. It's not in the books. It's just it's ridiculous. And it's up to the artists and the poets to, bring out what the history is. It's not, it's just common sense. So that's what I make sure that, like when I was on the board of Blue Star, I brought up the fact that they were 12 years old, they had never had a one-person show of a Mexican American. And it's such obvious things. Just look at numbers, look at schedules, and I always do that, and I'm kind of, and even now when I see galleries and I don't see any representation, I mean, here's a city of 1.6 million people, 2 out of 3 are minorities, and the vast majority are Mexican American, and here you're like having all these shows, and it's like, it's just obvious to me. But unfortunately, it's a non-issue. At UTSA, Kathy Vargas wrote this letter. I wrote this second letter asking the president to please, have some professors, tenure-track professors, who are Mexican Americans. A lot of the kids need, somebody to identify with, and finally they're there, and I think it was large part through our efforts. And we've done, Santa Cisneros did this Grupo de los Cien, and we wrote letters to public television, the radio, and they started being more inclusive. Some people have to speak up. I learned in New York from African Americans and from the Jews to speak up, say what you feel. Because down here, it's the polite South. No one says anything, don't rock the boat, very polite, and then the Mexicans don't say anything either. It's like, in Mexico, nada pasa hasta que pasa. Nobody says anything. It's like impolite to be, it's considered rude to bring it up. But I don't think so. I think it's definitely the duty of poets and artists to bring this issue up in San Antonio. It's just what is missing. This city has a complex, an inferiority complex. It has to do with that. They try to deny anything that's Mexican when it's a beautiful thing. I mean, what can be, I know because when I grew up, I was like, ask God, why'd you have to make me Mexican? Why can't I be Anglo? And I went to school and I wanted to be white, And then when I was 17, we used to go to Mexico every year. My mother's from Mexico. And we'd go every year, and suddenly I saw the incredible beauty. I mean, that's where my art training was going to churches in Mexico and museums. And I saw the incredible culture it is. It's just so, complex. It's one of the world's great cultures. And yet it's, here there's just a complex, unfortunately. You hear somebody has a Spanish accent and they look at you as if you're like a servant. And if someone has an English or a French accent, it's like Americans love it, And it's just a ridiculous, it's absurd, and what can be more beautiful than having two cultures? And we have that here, and let's look at it as something that's good, not something that's bad. I mean, so that's why I have the cultural adjustment thing.
Okay. At this point, let's open it up to the audience, so we would welcome any questions. And Katie has a microphone to facilitate that, so just raise your hand. Yes.
This might be another specific question. So, but I noticed in your earlier work that you used wood instead of a typical canvas to paint on, and I wondered what led you to that decision.
I think that it was trying to get to the point, first decontextualizing it, just deal with that one issue that I was dealing with, the table, and whatever the issues of masculinity and those cultural issues of gathering, and just forget about anything else that could be in the background, just to focus in on that.
It helped you also with the shape, right? Shaping.
Yeah, and then also, wasn't painting, wasn't sculpture, and just, trying to, do something new.
Another question?
I'm interested in the move from the very expressive mark making that you've always had in your work to what I see as something that's quite a bit more sterile in its presentation. And are you afraid, the idea of sort of losing that particular aesthetic that you've worked so hard to cultivate? As an artist, we do this. We make these things a certain way so that we're recognized And are you afraid that some of that's going to go away?
That's a good question. No, well, you know, I'm an idea-based artist. I mean, I have my sort of currents and stuff, but I think that and that came with the public art mostly, but according to the context, I try to, and the subject matter, what my idea was, I choose the material to go along with that, to make sure that the material, you know, is inclusive of the total concept. Yeah, I developed that movement. It's true, I have a very calligraphic hand. I can draw, you know, if I'm looking at something really easily. And then incorporating that movement in with my idea of referring to all the movement in nature and its smallest elements and stuff, and then also in the largest ones. That's part of that. I think what happened was that I got older. You know, to keep up that energy, I mean, I would really prepare myself to do a painting. I'm just like, you know, like, and then it's like a dance. I mean, it was like a total dance, and I was really into it, and there was a lot of activity, a lot of stuff going on too while I was, you know, making my art. And I think that when you get older, you just can't sustain that energy. It's part of it. And then moving on to the computer, there was a question of the rendition, of the way you do it, and kind of if it looked kind of funky or a little bit, I don't know, not folksy, but I wanted to give it a more of a contemporary edge. I think that was part of it also. There's many different reasons of why I left that, but no, I really don't care. I mean, I'm not interested in fame, as you know, as like a lot of artists are. I'm more interested in really trying to say something of significance. I mean, I really want to. I mean, to me, that's. I mean, there's so much the cultural adjusting to be done, you know, and I'm more. For me, that's more important that there's something important being said. And I can't stand it when you go see art and it's like looking like, so what, you know. For me, it has to say something. And so it's just all part of all those different things that made me stop using my hands so much.
Another question? Yes?
Yeah, I was interested in lately you've been using photography as part of your work. How'd you get interested in that? And were you always interested in photography, or is it?
When I was an art student, took a lot of photography classes, but when I was going to school in Peru, I traded my camera for pre-Columbian vases, and that was the last time I took pictures. But now I have cameras again, I'm into it again. I think I've always wanted to do the erotics series on the tables, and I think that my artistically, or you know, I couldn't interpret it as well as I wanted to. And so then I went to the camera. I said, well, I'm just gonna, you know, hire models and do it that way. And it was just just a convenience of using whatever's around to get my ideas across. And I think I like the fact that these people, this is something else, are, you know, ended up being like the models ended up being mulattos and mestizos, and I thought that was great because the whole world is there, you know. That's another point with me using DNA that I want to, like an aside going back to, is that now that the discovery of DNA, and of course we all, anthropology, that we all know, we all came from Africa, and there's no such thing as race, you know, and that we're all mixed. Even the people have the concept of purity, or, you know, if they do their you know, their genealogy, they'll find out that they're not pure. I read this article that said that, you know, Homo sapiens is black, and everyone who's not black is a mutation, you know. So, you know, so I think it's that it just happened by accident. But I'm really happy that you know, one was mulatto, the one was mestiza, so the whole world is there. So.
One last question. I heard something in the back there. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello. Rolando, I wanted to say what a wonderful experience it was to be able to view your work and to listen to David engage you in such detailed questions. These particular images that you just showed of the light-skinned mujer with the perky nipples and the Señor Moreno, you know, I can't see if he has got foreskin or is skin. But this makes reference to el sistema de las castas, the beautiful illustrations of race and combinations that the Spaniards did who knows when, ¿verdad? So I was wondering if you could talk about your selection of the pale color of the woman, and the moreno color of the man, and then also, if in your Scent of Attraction series, can we hope to see something at Lisa Ortiz's gallery, maybe dealing with the scents of maybe 2 female or 2 male, or can you speak to us of that, please?
Sure. Yeah, you will see some. When I went to Cuernavaca, and then my friend is a professor at the university, so he got in contact with the art school, and they have models, and people came, and I chose according to kind of by the way they looked. I don't really think of those things. I mean, I grew up, at our table with people of all different colors. My mother was very fair, my father was very dark. It's no big deal for Latinos, but I didn't really think about it that much. But those Costa paintings you're talking about, was documentation of that was the first time, of what they knew at that time. The Europeans had this mixture. This mixture was happening, so they were documenting all the different, black with white, white with Indian, whatever, Indian with black, and that's what those Costa paintings were. I'm not necessarily referring to those in these pieces, but it just so happened that, that they're, like I said, the whole world is there, Indian, black, white, and, everybody's welcome.
And at your table.
At my table, that's right.
Which is a great note to end on. So I want to thank Rolando for being my guest this evening, and thank you all for coming, and look forward to more future events of this nature here at Summit. Thank you.